Welcome, everyone. Happy Wednesday. We're super excited to have you. We're going to give everyone just a couple minutes to log in, and we will go ahead and get started. Super excited to have you all here today. As we are approaching the 10:33 mark, we're going to start off some introductions, and then we'll get into some of the content. I wanted to go ahead and thank you all so much for joining us here today. My name is Dominic. I am the Senior Manager of Product Marketing here at Bambi. Again, we're so thrilled to have you here with us. Here at Bambi, we have customers asking all the time about HR compliance and questions about how they can keep their business protected. We've got more people registered for this webinar than any other webinar that we've done so far. So this is going to be a really exciting topic for everyone. Before we dive right into all of the information, I did have a few quick housekeeping notes for everyone. All attendees are going to be muted throughout the presentation, and we do this just to make sure that we minimize any potential background noise. At the bottom of your screen, you should see an icon labeled Q&A. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please drop them in the Q&A box right there. We do have some time set aside to respond to some of your questions about compliance. So we'll get that taken care of at the end of the presentation. Additionally, you will see an icon that's labeled chat. If you're having any technical issues, we do have a few members of our team ready and waiting to help address those issues as quickly as possible. And at any time during the webinar, if you would like to speak to a Bambi consultant, please just type "contact me" into the chat and we can get you on the phone with someone ASAP. Last thing here, once the webinar is over, please take just a few seconds to complete a survey we have. And this is going to help us improve the experiences for you. You will also be receiving a recording of this webinar within 48 hours after we end. So if there's any information you weren't able to capture during the next 30 minutes, you will have the opportunity to go back through and revisit the content. With that said, I'm super excited to introduce our speaker, Natalie. She is one of our resident Bambi business engagement managers. She's a rock star here at Bambi. She has years of experience in talent acquisition and HR compliance. So there really is no one better for this topic. Natalie, go ahead and take us from here.
Thank you so much, Dom. Welcome. It's great to have you today. I'm glad to see that many of you are in attendance, that you're putting a priority on your compliance, because you'll definitely learn a lot today. As Dom mentioned, my name is Natalie Neitz, and I am passionate about HR. Throughout my career, I've seen HR practices that range from policy heavy to termination heavy and all in between. But what I've learned is that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to HR. Every business is unique, and HR needs to adapt to the needs and the goals of each business. So today, we'll be discussing the essential compliance areas that every small business owner must know. By building a strong foundation in compliance, you can minimize risks and create a culture that promotes success. So whether you're starting and you're new to the world of the business and you have no employees, or you have hundreds of employees, this webinar is for you. Let's dive into the world of HR compliance and discover how you can build a better business. I'm excited to present today's agenda. We'll be covering what compliance is and how you can achieve it in your organization. But this won't be your typical boring presentation. I'll be sharing some fantastic recommendations that will help you stay on top of your compliance game. And of course, we'll wrap up with the exciting Q&A session where you can ask those burning questions that you have. So buckle up and let's get chatting about compliance. It would be better to understand how you feel about your knowledge of HR compliance. So I'd love to start by taking a poll. So let me go ahead and send this your way. Definitely want to know how you feel about your HR compliance. Okay, so that's headed your way now. Would love to see those answers get going. Again, we may be at the beginning of our journey, or we're just veterans who know the ins and outs, but I'll give you a little secret. Even experts in compliance are constantly having to educate themselves and stay up to date with the changing laws and regulations. It is most certainly a process. I'm seeing a lot of responses coming in, and I'm seeing a lot of intermediate, average, and need help. And it actually looks like it's a wide range. That's awesome. Don't worry, we're going to be sharing compliance 101 and cover the basics. So no matter where you fall on the scale of compliance and knowledge, you're in good company. So let's go ahead and continue. In my HR career, I've seen many situations from a soy sauce attack in the break room, true story, to an employee falling asleep on the job. That being said, I want to introduce you to this employee, Betty. Yes, Betty is asleep on the job. It's not the first time this has happened either. Not really appropriate in a work environment and definitely behavior we would want to address right away. But there's more to this story. Betty has always been a good performer. However, in the past month, she's constantly been missing deadlines, coming to work late, and today she fell asleep on the job again. Betty's manager, Tom, has decided it's time to consider termination, as he's previously discussed this with Betty and talked about this poor behavior, and she was even on a final warning for the behavior. Tom goes to the business owner and says, it's time to discuss the situation. So I want to ask you the question, how do you think you would handle this situation? We're going to visit the story again after learning about compliance, and we'll decide if it's time to terminate. For now, I want to focus on understanding compliance. HR compliance is a critical aspect of managing any business. It involves aligning your policies and management practices with the relevant federal, state, and local labor laws. This ensures that your organization adheres to those legal requirements and can potentially avoid claims against your business. Although compliance is legally mandated, it's also a fundamental principle that protects both your business and your employees. It lays groundwork for fair and ethical practices, which ultimately can contribute to a positive workplace culture. Given the complexity of compliance, it is essential to approach it methodically. There are many different categories to consider, from wage laws to hour laws to workplace safety regulations. However, by starting with the foundational principles of compliance, we can begin that solid understanding of its importance and how it impacts our day-to-day operations. Ensuring compliance with all labor laws, again, is crucial for any business, no matter its size or industry. As you may already know, both state and federal laws are mandatory, but it's essential to also consider the local requirements specific to your business's location. Location matters. Let's take Bambi headquarters as an example. Located in the bustling city of Los Angeles, not only do we have to comply with state and federal laws, but also with local regulations in place. Some cities in California, including Los Angeles, have additional requirements on top of what the state mandates. California requires employers to provide sick leave for all employees, but Los Angeles mandates even more generous sick leave policies. It's really important to be aware of these specific regulations, as non-compliance can lead to costly lawsuits and legal penalties. So whether you're located in California or any other state, it is vital to stay up to date on all labor laws, including sick leave requirements and those local regulations. Do you know the laws in place for your business location? Let's take another quick poll to talk about where our audience is located today. I'm really curious to find out if we are team West Coast or East Coast. So go ahead and start submitting your answers to that. And again, there's over 400 businesses in attendance with us here today. So we're really excited to see who's going to win this one. Okay, results are coming in. So far, we have a lot of West Coasters. Don't worry, East Coast, you have our love still. I actually used to be an East Coaster, even though I may fancy the West a little bit more, and I'm currently there, but we still appreciate you. Way cool to see our Mid-Central folks too. Glad to have everybody here. Go ahead, and now let's learn about what's important besides location also. It's important to note that compliance laws are not solely based on location, but also the size of the business's workforce. The number of employees can trigger additional compliance obligations. As a business owner, it's important to understand the various federal laws that impact your business. While these laws on the screen apply to all businesses, others are determined by employee headcount. Take, for example, the Family and Medical Leave Act, which you may know as FMLA. This requires businesses with 50 or more employees to provide up to 12 weeks of unpaid leave for eligible employees. It is imperative to follow the law to the letter to avoid any legal complications. Location-based laws, on the other hand, can be illustrated by the Fair Labor and Standards Act, which you may know as the FLSA. The FLSA establishes minimum wage, overtime pay, record keeping, and youth employment standards. However, each state, and again, those local laws, may require your business to provide more than what's outlined in the FLSA. For instance, while the federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour, your state might require a higher wage, and a specific city in your state could have different requirements. Compliance is not an easy thing to Google, and when you do, you may be only getting a piece of the puzzle. At this point, I'd like to also mention that compliance isn't just about legal issues and penalties. It's also about creating safe and fair workplaces for your employees. And that's essentially the intent of why these laws exist. So just keep that in mind as we go through this presentation. Let's talk about the most common compliance gaps. As we all know, the employee life cycle is a fundamental aspect of any business, and ensuring compliance throughout this process is critical. At Bambi, we've observed some common themes among our customers when it comes to compliance, and we are really excited to share them with you. We'll be exploring the various stages of the employee life cycle, starting from the very beginning with recruiting and interviewing, and going all the way to termination and offboarding. Each stage is equally important and requires proper compliance measures to ensure legal and ethical practices. So let's start at the first stage, pre-employment. Compliance starts even before you hire an employee. And even if you don't end up hiring a potential candidate, that candidate could still make a claim against your business. Let me give you a couple examples. Your state may have specific laws on the hiring process, which could include requirements such as what a job posting contains. Or another example is you could have improperly trained hiring managers, and in the interview process, they could potentially ask an inappropriate question, such as asking a pregnant woman when she is due. Not good. If you've seen the movie 2 Weeks Notice, you know how awkward that situation can be, but it also can open up your business to potential discrimination lawsuits, and we need to avoid those. Knowing these specific laws can reduce your risk, and a good tip to take away is to ensure that you train your employees on how to properly interview. So when is the last time you provided training to your team? If you don't know or you need to know, it's definitely worth looking into training on this if you haven't done so. Taking a proactive approach will always mitigate your risks. It's also important to know the legal requirements for storing documents from the hiring process. This includes candidates that you didn't even hire. This documentation can help protect your business in case of any claims or disputes are made against the business. As someone with a background in talent acquisition, this is one of my favorite subjects. I could talk about this topic all day long, but for now, let's move on to the next phase of the employee life cycle. As you welcome new employees to your team, in addition to making it a welcoming and fun experience, it is essential to ensure that you are complying with all the necessary federal and state regulations. This includes collecting proper documentation, such as the I-9 form, or following the guidelines for these processes. Moreover, states like New York have anti-discrimination and sexual harassment policies that require employers to provide training and also proof of that training for each employee. This is just one example of how compliance is essential to ensure a safe and fair work environment. A good tip is, while it's not always legally required, providing offer letters and job descriptions can greatly mitigate your risk and also set expectations for your employees. It also helps to have documentation to support your business. In case of disputes, like an employee claiming they were promised a higher salary verbally, you have a line of defense. Remember, documentation is key to risk mitigation, and you can use that offer letter to show that you were in agreement with that employee and not have to go forward with a claim. When it comes to employee satisfaction, it's important to properly classify employees as exempt or non-exempt, essentially salary or hourly. This can be complex, and there are even exemptions based on job title, industry, and duties of a job. It's a lot. Additionally, small business owners sometimes misclassify employees as independent contractors. Maybe they don't know better. Maybe they don't know when someone should be a W-2, or maybe we're trying to avoid paying taxes. This can put them at risk and potentially lead to claims. Remember to always abide by the Fair Labor and Standards Act, as well as state and local laws that may require those additional compliance measures. So do you know if you're in compliance with the FLSA? When it comes to employee relations, there are several HR compliance risks that employers need to be aware of. And here are some of the top ones. 1, discrimination and harassment. Employers have a legal obligation to ensure that their employees are not subjected to discrimination or harassment in the workplace. And this can be based on characteristics such as race, gender, religion, age, or more. 2, retaliation. Employers must not retaliate against an employee for engaging in a protected activity, such as filing a good faith complaint about discrimination, harassment, or other unlawful conduct that they'd like to report. And 3, leave laws. It's so important to comply with federal and state laws, such as the Family and Medical Leave Act, which you may know again as the FMLA, and the Americans with Disabilities Act, which we call the ADA. It's important to always ensure that employees are not discriminated against for taking leave or for seeking accommodations for a disability. Next, let's talk about health and safety. I want to discuss specifically workers' compensation. Workers' compensation insurance is mandatory in most states and provides important benefits to employees who are injured or fall ill as a result of their job. Do you know if your state requires workers' compensation? The chances are it most likely does, so be sure to check on that. It covers medical expenses, lost wages, and even vocational rehabilitation services. Employers should know that this insurance also protects them from lawsuits filed by employees who were injured or became ill at work. In the event of employee's injury or illness, it's essential to report that to your workers' compensation insurance carrier promptly. Failure to do so may result in penalties or fines. Employers should also maintain records of the incident and the employee's medical treatment, also including any missed days worked. Another good thing to do, and a pro tip to take a proactive approach on this, is to be in contact with your workers' compensation insurance carrier. Ask them for the preferred in-network facilities that they would want your employees to go to in the case of an injury or an illness. They also will have what's called an incident report form. At Bambi here, we have a generic one that can apply, but a lot of people at the workers who have workers' compensation, their insurance carriers definitely want you to use their form. So take a proactive approach, not only train on your staff what to do in the incident when an employee is injured or ill, but what form to fill out and where they're able to take them or they can go. So employers can also take steps to prevent workplace injuries and illnesses by implementing a safety program that includes regular employee training. I prefer quarterly, safety inspections, and the use of personal protective equipment, such as a mask, if that applies to your industry. A proactive approach to safety can help lower the number of workplace incidents, but ultimately it reduces workers' compensation insurance premiums for you, and it protects your employees and saves you from having to deal with that headache or an unsafe environment. We always want to make sure that our employees are safe. It's critical for employers to understand and follow worker compensation laws to protect themselves and their employees. Remember, workers' compensation insurance is more than a legal requirement. It's an investment in your employees' well-being and your company's financial stability. Terminations. Terminating employees are highly complex. We here at Bambi know, especially our HR managers, we have seen so many different terminations, and we know what are the pain points or red flags of them. It can always be a difficult decision, but it's really important to ensure that you're doing it in compliance with HR laws and regulations. This means having documentation to support your decision, providing a clear reason for the termination, and following proper procedures. Failure to comply with HR laws and regulations can lead to legal action and potential liability for the business. So by prioritizing these HR compliance in the termination process, you can mitigate your risk and ensure that you are most importantly treating your employees fairly and consistently and in accordance with the law. That's what we're always trying to ensure we're doing, that we're consistent and that we're fair and in accordance with the law, HR 101. When an employee separates from your company, whether it's voluntary or involuntarily, or essentially if they resigned or you fired them, there are certain legal requirements that must be met. For example, you may be required to provide the employee with a final paycheck on their last day of work or within a certain number of days. Again, this varies state to state and it is dependent on the type of termination. So be sure to check your state website. Now that we are wrapping up those common compliance gaps, I want to talk a lot about the importance of how to approach HR situations and what's helped me be successful as an HR professional. As business owners, it's important to approach HR situations with a humble and open mindset. We should always strive to seek first to understand before jumping to conclusions or assumptions. Confirmation bias, which is a really great topic to research, can lead us down the wrong path. If you go into a situation thinking you know the answer, you're going to be collecting all the facts that support your hypothesis. So it's crucial to collect facts and react to the situation based on the facts rather than letting our emotions take over or our pride. While it can be challenging, it's best to leave little room for emotional reactions and instead focus on the facts and the issue at hand. This approach can ultimately prevent hardship to the business and help us make more informed decisions and help us to better understand our options also. Try to leave emotion at the door and seek to understand versus assuming you know the answer. You may receive a different result and ultimately protect your business. And also, it's important to note that you don't have to have an answer right away. If there's any time where with you're an employee and you feel threatened or you feel like you don't know how to help them, you could always have the option of sending that employee home with pay pending the decision. So always know you have that in your back pocket. It's better to make a well-informed decision and take a step back than it is to do something in the moment, especially when emotions are high. So non-compliance with employment laws can result in significant consequences for businesses. We know this. Here are some frequent examples. 1, failure to comply with employment laws and regulations can result in hefty fines and legal penalties. For example, violating the Fair Labor Standard Act, or FLSA again, can lead to a lawsuit against the employer, which can result in back pay, liquidated damages, and attorney's fees, a headache. 2, non-compliance can damage a business's reputation, both internally and externally. If an employer is found to have violated discrimination laws or other regulations, it can result in negative press, which can impact employee morale and your public perception, which is everything that we want to avoid. 3, failure to comply with employment laws and regulations can lead to high employee turnover rates. It's already hard enough in the year of 2023 to get employees to stay on. There's constant turnover, and depending on your industry or the type of work you do, it can even be really high attrition rates. So if the employee feels that they're not being treated fairly or if their rights are being violated, they may start looking for work elsewhere. Non-compliance, number 4, can also lead to a loss of business. Clients may choose to work with a business that has a better reputation for complying with laws and regulations, which can result in a loss of revenue. So ask yourself, am I providing the environment fairly to my employees where they want to be here and I am giving their rights? It's so important to make sure that you are providing to your employee their basic rights. Let's switch gears and discuss how we can achieve compliance. HR compliance takes work because it requires a lot of time and effort to stay informed. Laws are ever changing, regulations are ever changing, and as HR professionals, it's our responsibility to ensure that our clients are always in compliance with relevant laws and regulations. This requires us to constantly educate ourselves and our teams to stay up to date on those changes that may impact our clients. It takes dedication and hard work to stay ahead of the curve, but the peace of mind that comes with knowing that our clients are in good hands is most worth it. People who are in HR, from my experience, and I can attest to personally, want to see others succeed and are truly driven by knowing that they're taking care of their people. At times, it can be a labor of love and very self-sacrificing, but with always good intent. I like to talk about compliance as a living thing that you need to keep healthy. Let me further explain by comparing an analogy of keeping our bodies fit. Fitness is more than just lifting a few weights. It requires a healthy diet, rest, hydration, a dynamic workout that not only is arm day or leg day, it engages every different muscle group. It's a lot of work, we know this, but when done properly, the body is more protected against injuries and illnesses. More than that, the body is healthy, thriving, and ready to take on each new day. HR compliance is a living thing that requires time and effort to keep healthy too. It's not just about checking boxes on a list, but a continuous effort to stay informed and up to date on the latest regulations and laws. As an HR professional, I prioritize education and training to ensure that my team and I are always equipped to provide the best possible guidance to our clients. Just like how a fit body is more resilient and better equipped to handle challenges, a company that prioritizes HR compliance is better prepared to handle and protect their employees. It takes work, it is not foolproof, but it's worth it for the health and the success of the business. Compliance is a process. We've talked about this. Compliance is not a one-time event, but rather a continuous process that requires ongoing effort and attention. It's like a journey where you must keep going and moving forward to stay on track. This can be a daunting task for any business owner, but it's crucial to have a support system in place to help you navigate through this process. Getting help from HR professionals or compliance experts will save you time and money in the long run. They can assist you in identifying potential compliance risks and provide guidance on how to mitigate them. So do not ever hesitate to seek help when needed, as it can be the difference between success and failure in your business. Okay, so let's jump back to our employee Betty and wrap this up. So do you think this is a good termination? Well, let's see what the facts are of this case. Tom brought the issue to his owner of the business and said he wanted to terminate. The business owner asked Tom to take a step back to assess the situation and gather all the necessary information before taking further action. The owner, having an HR background, lucky him, recognized the importance of HR compliance and knew that terminating Betty without fully understanding the situation could result in legal consequences. Through their research, they discovered that Betty had approached another supervisor. And this is why, while Tom was out of the office on PTO, they recognized that Betty may be eligible for an accommodation or even FMLA, considering she's been there for a year. And they took the necessary steps to engage in this process and provide the proper paperwork to Betty. By doing so, they were able to avoid a lawsuit and ensure that Betty received the accommodation she needed to perform her job duties. This is a great example of the importance of HR compliance and the benefits of taking a proactive and informed approach to all HR situations. A employee's past behavior can define future behavior. And if you have someone who is constantly performing well and then something like this starts going on, there might be a bigger issue to dive into. So don't always take it as face value. We sometimes need to look into the situation and get from the employee directly, help me understand what's going on. It can benefit you to take that initial step in a way that you're showing caring, you're showing care to your employees, one, and creating a good environment, but also potentially catching issues like this that could really be detrimental to the business. This outcome could have been very different if Tom followed his initial instinct to terminate, and if the owner did not have HR guidance or experience from their past. By taking the time to gather all the facts and following the correct procedures, they were potentially able to avoid a lawsuit and protected the business and this employee. They also maintain a positive and productive workplace culture for all of their employees, which is worth so much. All of us can use help at times, and it can make all the difference. Recommendations. Of course, I am biased. I love Bambi. I chose to work for Bambi the moment I viewed their website. I believe truly in what they're doing, and I'm grateful I've been able to be helping small businesses and small business owners with their businesses. While HR has always been a passion of mine, and so have people, entrepreneurship and operations is also. My experience here working with my clients, and many of you I know are in attendance, I'm so glad to have you, has taught me so much about what it takes to be successful in a business. I am sincerely grateful to continuously learn from you, and I truly appreciate your collaboration. It has been a wonderful journey with many of you as my clients. That being said, Bambi is obsessed with helping small businesses. We know you're busy and may not have the time or resources to stay up to date with compliance or best HR practices. That is why we started this business. We want to help. At a fraction of the price, we provide you with expert HR guidance right at your fingertips, just a phone call or a new HR chat request away, and an interactive platform that has many useful features to protect and help your business. Our HR experts conduct routine HR audits where they ask the right questions and discover the compliance gaps that you may have, or tell you that your health and compliance is exceptional. We can help you with that. Taking the proactive approach, especially with an HR expert, will ensure that your compliance is in that good health phase. We provide custom and compliant policies. For example, if you're having an issue with cell phone use among your employees while they're on the clock, we've got you covered. Not only can we provide you with a custom policy that addresses these behaviors, we'll also provide you with strategic guidance to effectively communicate this to your employee or employees, depending on if it's a bigger issue. Not only that, we can provide you with the best practices on how to manage this poor behavior moving forward. Policies are great, but we all know the company is better protected when they are signed. Our Bambi platform sends and receives signatures electronically for your employees. So no more running around with paper or having to collect paper that first day, which is, I've been there, it's a lot. The employees start their business on day one, they probably have already signed their necessary documentation. That's great. It also keeps track of who hasn't signed policies and notifies you and the employee or employees accordingly. You can even send your corrective action through our corrective action tool for employees to sign and more. There is a lot more. Most importantly, you'll be partnered with a dedicated HR manager who will be there every step of the way. And we are passionate about your success. I hope you can see that. I would love for you to learn more about us and how we can help you. And you can contact us at this website and this number. I so much appreciate your attendance today. And I do have time for 1 or 2 questions. So I'm going to check those now and take a look. But again, thank you for your time. I hope you learned a lot today about compliance. Really start with the basics. Start small with those government websites on the state, federal, and local front. All right, let's take a look at these questions. All right, so someone asked, what is the solution if candidates accept offers from one company in spite of getting an offer letter from my company? You know, that actually varies depending on the type of business you are, or if you're even in a legal binding contract. So that's a really complex question. So I wouldn't want to break down without knowing the facts of it, but it could mean a lot of things. Again, HR, there's so many different paths. Collecting the facts on this one would really be helpful, because if it's more of a legally binding document and they go against what they signed, that could be in the legal realm at that point, and you might want to get an attorney. All right.
Hey, Natalie, we had a question come in the chat during the conversation around compliant interviews. Someone was asking, is it okay to ask the origin of someone's last name during an interview?
So that's a really great question, and it's not worth the risk. If you were to discover the origin of someone's last name, that could potentially be seen as discrimination, as the origin and where they come from could indicate if someone has a personal bias and they don't hire them, they could potentially prove that, and you could have a discrimination claim on your hands if you don't hire this employee. Even if you do hire the employee and they feel that they're being discriminated against, just knowing that that person has information about them, that could be a potential claim also. So that is one you definitely want to avoid. If it's, you know, you like sports and you go to sports with your kids on the weekend, you know, you can mention that, but you take a risk in doing so. You don't even want to invite those type of conversations into the interview, because then the candidate may feel expected to share that. Okay. What are some of the other questions that you should not ask when you are hiring? Okay, definitely great. So a couple of those things would be, like we mentioned, kids, about their sexual orientation, their religion. When I train hiring managers on best to interview, I talk a lot about just kind of leave personal out of it. You can always get a culture fit, but base the conversations around the values of the business and how they perform work in those types of situations, and try to tie it into your values. So what can help you prevent asking these questions is being extremely structured with your interview questions and the process of it before you even engage in the interview. For example, you would have simply a 1-page sheet of introduction where you'll touch base on the company values, what to expect in the type of team environment they'll be working in, and then basic questions that ask about past behaviors, because we know past behaviors predict future behaviors. An example of this is, tell me about a time that you had a disagreement with a fellow employee. How did it go? What were the results? It's best to look into what's called TS Train, or the STAR method. That's a really helpful method when interviewing, because it allows you to avoid asking leading questions. Again, you know I like talent acquisition, but the last thing I'll give on a tip for interview questions is, if you ask a question and the candidate can answer yes or no to it, that is a leading question. So avoid those questions. We want them to talk about their past experience so you can better assess them if they'll be a good fit for the position and in your culture of your company.
Oh my gosh, we have so many amazing questions coming in, Natalie. I have one more question I'm going to ask for you. For those of you who didn't have an answer to your question, please reach out. HR guidance is our bread and butter. So the question I have here for you, Natalie, is, can you ask someone to take a training course before their scheduled hire date, even if the company pays for the course?
That is not advice. That's not something I would advise, especially if they're a W-2 employee that is an hourly paid employee. You have to pay them for the time to also participate in the course. And if they're not essentially an employee already, then you wouldn't want to engage in that. There would be risk in that. So things like signing policies, we know our applicant tracking systems, or ATS, definitely take a proactive approach on collecting documents such as W-4 or I-9, or even signing company policies before they begin. But things like training, there's so many nuances with it that you really would want to do that once they are employed. Further, another little pro tip, if you have true independent contractors, then you will not want to provide them training of any kind, because that is not what you can do for independent contractors. So check those laws too on your state-to-state basis, because there's very specific things that are dependent on those things such as training, which will make you either independent contractor or W-2. And if you lean into the risk of training an independent contractor, they could come back and claim that they should have been W-2, should have been paid overtime hours, and now you may have to owe them back pay.
Wow, thank you. I mean, I've been working here at Bambi for over a year now, and I learned so much. Thank you so much, Natalie. This was really, really impressive.
Thank you.
I hope all of you found this just as informational as I did. I want to thank you again for joining us here today. We do have a short survey for you at the end of this presentation. Please fill it out. We're going to be launching a webinar every single month, and we want to make sure that we're providing you with the best possible information and a great experience. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you.
Everyone, have a great day, and reach out to us if you have any specific HR questions. We'd love to get you on the phone with an HR manager today. All right.
Thank you.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.